Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and we're talking about the Steuben County Family Court Judge. Congratulations on the campaign.
Thank you so much, Frank.
How exciting is it?
Thrilling.
Thrilling. Good,
yes.
good. First of all, I've got to give the disclaimer, which is judge interviews or candidates for judge are a little bit on the boring side, not because of the job you do, because the job I have, which is I can't ask you specifics. So you're not, I just telling the viewer, you're not dodging any questions, and I'm not asking weak questions. Mm-hmm. Our hands are tied, right?
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about the campaign so far. And I think the best way to start is to talk about your background. Tell us about your background.
Absolutely. Well, Frank, as you know, I'm a Corning native.
Of course.
And I hope this doesn't get me kicked off the show.
No,
but I know we're on different sides here. I'm a proud East High Trojan.
I know. Oh, no. Okay, well, time to go to break.
Yes.
No, that's...
But no, if your viewers here are watching from Corning, mm-hmm. they'll know of the Rossettie family, and they'll probably think, big family. Mm. That's me. That's what I'm all about. Family is always number one for me. My extended family on both sides is from Steuben County, and I've chosen to raise my own family here too. You may or may not be aware that there's really only one qualification for becoming a judge in New York State at the county level, and that's 10 years of being licensed as an attorney.
Right.
Nothing else.
That's wild.
Right? No experience setting foot in a courtroom, no legal practice experience, nothing like that is required. Here in Steuben, though, we are so fortunate to have highly qualified attorneys and in our bar, and so the candidates in this role, as you know, have always had a lot to offer. My personal legal experience is vast, and it spans multiple counties and many substantive areas of law. I have represented clients in administrative hearings for disability appeals, foreclosures, bankruptcies, evictions, criminal matters, divorces, and the full range of family court cases. I feel really lucky that practicing here in Steuben County has given me the opportunity, since I was first admitted 12 years ago, to get that hands-on courtroom experience immediately. So the moment I was admitted, I'm there, I'm in court. The breadth and variety of legal cases that I've handled really provide an incredible foundation for some experience for me to draw from, which I think is really valuable in this role. I've partnered also with cutting edge experts in the legal field in my 7 years that I've been at Cornell Law School, and I've co-counseled some very impactful cases. Additionally, the wide reach of my litigation gives me perspective. So I've appeared in front of judges across many counties up here in rural upstate New York, and I've had moments where I've had judges who have made very calculating, discreet, admirable use of their discretion in court. But I've also had situations where I've seen and witnessed judges ostracizing people on the stand and re-traumatizing victims. So, through this process of appearing in many different counties in court, I've learned really the type of judge that I want to be.
Sure.
Fair, compassionate, and impartial, and ultimately someone who upholds the dignity of all people in our county in the courtroom. Not only do I bring this breadth of experience with me, but more specifically, my training and my education has uniquely positioned me for the responsibilities of family court.
Okay.
So as you know, this is a family court position. I've really focused my legal training and my practice in family court, mostly advocating for victims of domestic violence. As a woman and as a parent, safety for families in this community is paramount.
Sure.
I've studied the cycle of violence, and I've evaluated clients for the lethality risks when they share with me sometimes what they and their children have endured. I've helped countless families in this county really struggling in awful situations. My goal for clients as an advocate, which is what I've been for the last 12 years, has really been to minimize the threat that the court sometimes presents, as a way to re-traumatize victims. It's really important for me to allow victims to seek justice and to avoid that re-traumatization and to promote and support healthy family structures by connecting people to the wealth of resources and the service providers that we have here in Steuben County. I see myself as a connector, and I think that's why a lot of people reach out to me in that way. Finally, of course, my personal life, my own family situation really makes me a special kind of candidate. If I am fortunate to have the confidence of the voters here, I will be the first mom in 200 years to ever serve in this role in our county.
Wow.
Yes. And so setting aside, though, the precedential significance of that, being a parent in and of itself gives me this frame of reference that I think is so valuable for the position. Let me tell you a quick story, if that's okay.
Of course.
When I was 8 months pregnant with my second child, I was in day 2 of a trial in a neighboring county. It was a very contentious custody trial. Both sides were having a difficult time coming to any sort of resolution, and there were allegations of domestic violence on both sides. My client disclosed what at best would be seen as a toxic home life situation. Very dangerous things going on. And the standard, of course, in family court is always what's in the best interest of the child. Mm-hmm. So that's what the court is looking to try to determine. In this situation, because of how difficult it was, the judge called for a Lincoln hearing, which is an opportunity for the judge to speak privately in chambers with the child. Okay. No parents are allowed back in this confidential, private situation. No attorneys for the parents are allowed either. And anything that's said in there is never allowed to come out. So whatever the child discloses to the judge is sealed. No testimony ever comes out. In this situation, as I mentioned, it was really contentious and difficult, horrible allegations, and the child had explained to the client, who was mom at this point in time, my client was really worried that her 6-year-old would have to go back and speak to this judge alone.
Sure.
Right? Very scary for her. She had endured some trauma as a child, and so the whole thing was terrifying. As a parent, my heart really broke for this little girl, and I was just hoping that the judge in the case would be empathetic, someone who had compassion and patience to really build trust with this child, so they could disclose what was really going on, in a safe space. For me, again, safety at home, safety in our community, and safety in the courtroom is just really important to me. I have 3 young children, and I can tell you that I've learned so much about age-appropriate questioning and viewing the world from the eyes of a child, and how to really listen and have patience as a mom, and ultimately to respond with compassion. That's what I think I bring to this position, and I hope it serves me well.
Well, and you mentioned 3 young children. You're obviously a busy personal life, professional life.
Yes.
So kind of the simple question, and you somewhat answer, I believe, in your background, why did you decide to run for Steuben County and Family Court Judge?
Yeah, that's a great question. Growing up here in Corning, I frequently attended Rotary meetings with my dad.
Yeah, of course.
And that Rotarians' service above self refrain was something that really resonated with me. I actually wrote my law school essay on this, and service in the community became my primary motivator for becoming a lawyer. True to this mantra, I have always served my community in my personal life and my professional life in public service. That's the entirety of my experience has been in public service, whether that's pro bono legal work, advocating as a legal aid attorney, or serving on nonprofit boards. When I was asked to run for this position by the Democratic Committee, I was extremely honored, first of all, and I thought long and hard about whether this was the right decision for me. Is it the best way that I could use my skills to serve the community? That's always top of mind. And also, is it the right decision for me and my family? Ultimately, this opportunity I thought would allow me to make a difference in the community in a new way. And it really fit that public purpose for me of giving back and helping families. And also, I was thinking, what better example for me to set for my children than to continue to use my education and experience for good to give back to this county that I call home.
Yeah. Well, and you're a unique race, and we talked about it in the past. This is for Steuben County and Family Court Judge. With the retirement of Phil Roach, the race is shaping up different than most races. This is not a typical campaign, right? So have you found the shortened campaign time kind of an issue in running?
I haven't done this before,
Right,
so for me, I don't have
that's a
any
good point.
context.
Okay.
It's just, it is what it is, and
Yeah.
I'm jumping in feet first. Just a little bit of brief history
Yeah.
for you, and you may already know this, but when in the very beginning, New York State had an appointive process. It wasn't elected
Okay.
for the judicial process, and Steuben County was founded in 1796.
Okay.
So then for 50 years, judges in this county were appointed. They were not elected. And then in 1846, with the New York State Constitution, it changed to become an elected process. And the reason for that, in part, was to allow people in the county to hear directly from candidates, to evaluate their qualifications and fitness for the role, and ultimately to make that decision themselves.
Right.
So judges are responsible for so much. They handle disputes between private parties. They handle disputes between the government and citizens. And electing an impartial and independent judge is really critical to our democracy. There was this 1913 case,
Yeah.
I'm always thinking case law as a lawyer, called In Re Rob. And it says that without public confidence, the judicial branch could not function. Well, how do we get that confidence in the judiciary? We give people a voice,
Sure.
right? And to have a voice in this process means a choice. So for me, I just feel really grateful to be able to do that, to offer a choice. As you know, the other judicial candidates are unopposed. And so really, for me, it's about democracy and giving people a choice in this election. So I guess I'll just say I'm grateful to be a part of it, and the shortened time frame doesn't really have an impact for me. It's just giving our community the option to to go to the ballots and use their voice.
Well, I know you had to hit the ground running. I guess that's obviously one of the issues with being a short campaign time. So when you're talking to everybody, what has been the common refrain? What are voters saying when they meet you?
So, our media locally has been covering some of the really difficult drug overdoses and this epidemic that's been on the rise. In the last year, I think we had 348 overdoses. It's
horrible.
It's awful. It's incredibly important to think about the implications of this. Some people are talking about that, but for the most part, when I go out to the Prattsburgh Festival, or I'm going to
all
a
the
local
festivals and fairs.
right,
And
exactly. I'm meeting with people, and I don't know if it's just who I am, but they're coming up to me and they're telling me their personal stories, the intimate details of their lives and their family situations. Everybody knows someone who's been to family court.
Of course.
There's so many family court cases, and so a lot of times what I hear is the court didn't, I didn't feel heard, I didn't feel listened to. I think that in the past, maybe there's been a lack of understanding. So part of it's been educational, but also just thinking about how, in my future, empathy is a part of what I bring. But another issue that really isn't spoken about in the media as much, but comes up all the time in these conversations, is domestic violence.
Okay.
It's a real problem here in Steuben County, and we just don't talk about it enough. And it's just been on the rise since COVID. So if you look, you can pull up the data on this in Steuben County, and the number of DV cases that our local courts have handled has risen dramatically since 2020. I think it was 288 family offense petitions, and that's just one piece of where domestic violence comes in. But in this last year, in 2023, we had 534 family offense petitions filed. That's more than all the termination of parental rights, child protective, juvenile cases, adoptions, guardianship cases combined in the county. So family offense petitions, that's, think about when people are seeking an order of protection and it's a dangerous situation. 534 is a really big number here. So, for me, I've handled a lot of cases. Primarily, all of my family court cases have involved some aspect of domestic violence or sexual assault. And as you probably know, Frank, 50% of the cases or 50% of what people endure in domestic violence situations never even see the light of day. You can think about all the reasons why someone wouldn't want to report it.
Of course.
So that, coupled with the fact that family offense petitions are just this one aspect of domestic violence that we see in the courts, it's really a gross underestimation of what's happening here in our county. My background, studying and teaching law, looking at that intersection between domestic violence and family law and really focusing on a trauma-informed lawyering approach over the last several years has allowed me to be in a position to recognize trauma and its impact on the parties and the children involved. It is so important that we really acknowledge the prevalence of this and the impact of trauma, especially on kids. And it comes into our court system, and I think it's our duty as adjudicators to create that sense of safety in the courtroom, and that means having a deep understanding of domestic violence and what that entails. So for me, that's one of the things that voters are talking about. And like I said, opening up to me, maybe it's just, as a mom or as a woman, I'm just connecting with people and I'm hearing these stories. And I've also seen it firsthand in my practical legal experience.
Well, I think it's only fair. I'm trying to ask all the same questions that I asked your opponent. So how much of your day-to-day life is like Matlock and Perry Mason?
Yeah.
It's only fair, right? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing like it? No. Okay, I didn't think so.
Not at all.
We're talking about the race for Steuben County and family court judge. Where can people find it? Well, let's start with how can people help your campaign, and then we'll find out more.
Sure. One of the other things I was thinking that would be important to talk about is just some of the biggest issues that
not just what voters are saying. You're right. Yes, I'm sorry I skipped over that.
No, that's okay.
Here I'm asking about Matlock and Perry Mason and not
Important
focusing
stuff.
on what's important.
No,
but you're right,
okay.
because it's not just what voters are saying that's obviously so vital, but there's going to be issues that you face that maybe we're not even aware of. What do you think the biggest issues you will face?
One of the things, so I'm on a couple different committees. One is a rural justice committee in upstate New York, thinking about how there's an aging population of attorneys, and there's so many open positions here in Steuben County. So in my role at Cornell, part of my job was connecting students and trying to encourage expert talent to stay here locally and to practice here. So I think that trying to recruit and train attorneys to stay in the rural area is really important, especially in the public service realm, in government, in legal aid. It's all part of access to justice, which is really a mission of mine, and accessibility in the courts is really important. So, we learned a lot through COVID, and there were a lot of changes in the law and allowing for technology to play a part in connecting people who might otherwise not have transportation or access to the courts. So for me, thinking creatively about accessibility, ensuring that everyone has the same access to the courts, whether that's doing a virtual hearing on particular applicable cases, and then finally just a coordinated response for mental health, drug treatment, and domestic violence resources. And I'm on one of these, the Permanent Commission on Access to Justice in New York State has this statewide these pilot programs where we're trying to get all the service providers together and create a list to make sure that all those resources are out there and doing that outreach. So I think it's a part of the court's job to make sure that people who come before the court have access to those, and that the material is front and center so that all of the service providers, we know who's out there and doing what. But your last question.
Yes, how it can help. Sorry about that.
Yes, that's all right. Yeah. If you're interested in getting involved, you can like our Facebook page, follow it, visit our website. You can volunteer. We have lots to do in a short period of time, as you know. If you're interested in a yard sign, we have the Democratic Committee office here. It's the old Tommy Hilfiger building. You can right down the street. You can reach out to us via the website. If it's closed, we can bring a sign right to your door. And I also just want to mention that in the last presidential election, only about 70% of the people in Steuben County voted. So the biggest thing that people can do is get out there and vote. I can't emphasize that enough to your viewers. You have a voice in this election. It's really important to get out there and vote. And I'm confident that the voters here in Steuben County will elect a judge with a deep commitment to public service, broad legal experience, and a real appreciation for family values.
And you mentioned the website. What is the website?
friendsofmichaela.com.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Frank.
And we'll talk again before November.
All right. Sounds great.
All right.
Thank
We'll
you.
be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us.